I just quickly run out everything. So let's skip this. And we have the code conduct. So if you witness or experience any harassment, please let us know. And join us. We are recruiting volunteers and join our Slack, Meetup, Facebook, and Twitter. And stay connected because next week we'll have a monthly event about data ethics and privacy and also text analysis on US media coverage. So. Okay. So it is
awesome. Thank you.
Tab crew.
Thank you. Okay, you don't have the same problem. So my name is Mariam. This is Amit, and we both are at Taproot. I'm just going to make sure you can see this. Okay, good. And actually today, as I spoke a couple of weeks ago at your meetup, and I spoke about from the hiring side. So actually, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is from hopefully the candidate side of the recruiting process. And so, go up, page down, right. Okay, this is the issue I had last time. Lost it. All right, so what we're actually going to talk about a little bit today is job ads and how to sort of improve your process in recruiting. Firstly, by dealing with some of the big pain points. One of which is that candidates typically you're very limited in the scope of jobs that you can apply to. And so we're trying to open that up with a bit of data science. So I've done a bit of analysis because the vast majority of you guys were talking about how you're applying for data science and data analyst roles. And so we did some work around those skills to show you other sorts of titles and other sorts of search strategies to look at. The second part of the talk that I wanted to do, actually, sorry, I should move this on. So actually, this is the first thing, is that we know that 80% of candidates, this is the sort of 80-20 rule, and I'm taking a lot of things with this, is to say that 80% of candidates apply to 20% of roles. So some roles have so many candidates applying to them, they become super competitive. And the way that I'm going to actually address this a little bit today is talk to you guys a bit about the other ways, other sorts of companies, other sorts of searches, other sorts of titles to look for that will sort of get a lot less candidates and that are sort of very similar in terms of the roles and things like that that you might not have thought about. The second thing is that even though this was sort of talked about as a resume workshop, the second part of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is that writing the most amazing resume isn't going to get you the whole way through. And one part of what I wanted to talk about today also was how we can warm job applications, because there's like a 7-fold difference between jobs that go through like cold application processes, so when you send them into the website of Doom and you never hear anything, versus when it goes in warm through someone that you know. And so through recruiters and referrals and networks. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then obviously the main part of today's talk is about resume tailoring and how that creates impactful resumes. And generally what I'm going to be talking about is how you can take a job description and we can sort of narrow it down. Now, having said this, this is going to be very, I hope, interactive. I hope you guys have lots of questions. I want you to interrupt me and on it as much as possible. So I don't want to have to talk the whole time, if that's possible, because I only have that much water, and that's what it's going to last for. So any questions up until now? I've looked through everyone's resumes. I'm going to be using some examples from people's resumes and some just more generalized. So if I am highlighting something that you know is definitely yours, it's because you did really well in everything else and I had to make you look embarrassing a little bit. So I guess that's the context for this. Anything else? So I just want to open it up to a couple of I just want to get your sense of where you guys think you're failing in since I know a lot of you have just started searching and a bunch of you have been searching for a while. So I wanted to get a sense of what you're feeling about job searching is and where you think we can really help you in that process.
Let me actually first ask,
Sure.
Does anyone enjoy searching for a job?
Okay.
You enjoy it. Why?
Well, because I have one now. So.
Oh, look at that. Talk about making people jealous.
So does everyone know this is Robin? And Robin's going to feature in part 2 of my little talk.
So you know my story.
Do people not enjoy searching for jobs? Is that the consensus? Or people not find it frustrating? Even if you have a job, I'm guessing, you've applied for one before, or maybe you haven't started. Could you tell us why you found it frustrating? Throw it out there, say anyone.
Don't be shy.
I'll put my hand up. There's no feedback. It's really frustrating because you send your resume into this email box or like website and then you never hear back. Maybe you might hear back like 6 months later while you have the job and then they're like, you're rejected. And you're like, thanks.
So why don't we start there? How many of you, even if you've got a job, even if you're not looking for jobs, based on your experience the last time you looked for a job, how many of you found sort of the application part to be the most frustrating? Just getting the resume together, putting a cover letter, sending it out there, not hearing back, maybe you didn't get called. Is that, show of hands, is that frustrating? Yeah, okay, so almost all of you thought that's frustrating. How many of you make it back past that stage and then you get that recruiter phone screen and then, ugh, that's such a pain. Okay, we got a few there. Not that many, but definitely a few recruiters. You know, recruiters are people who couldn't get any other job. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But it's tough. Nobody goes to school.
This, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Look, nobody goes to school to be a recruiter. Like nobody does. So the problem is, and it's not the recruiter's fault. They're very nice people. They're salesmen. They're saleswomen. They're very good people. But the problem's not them. The problem is they have an impossible task. They have hiring managers who don't know what they want. They have organizations that have their internal culture. They have job descriptions that are badly written. And they have hundreds of applicants that they've got to sort of filter through when they're not necessarily technical people. So it's a tough job. I feel for them. And part of what we're going to try and show you is by making their life easier, we're going to make your life easier. But how many of you then find or found the interview process to be the most challenging? Getting through technical interviews, behavioral, okay, we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, how many of you found, I don't know, visa, background stuff, that sort of thing to be the most frustrating? Okay, so we've got all sorts of problems today. If you share, we'll help. I'm guessing if you're having a problem, everyone else is having a problem. So we'll try, we look at resumes all day, we talk to hiring teams all day, we talk to recruiters all day. We'll try and help you out as much as we can.
Yeah,
Let's go.
great. Okay, so I'm only got a couple of tweets up here to sort of keep it light and interesting. And I think for you guys, this is a joke that kind of makes a lot of sense. And you frequently, I'm sure, see jobs that are maybe overqualified in the sense that they're always, like, as in there's a junior level job asking for recent grads that wants like 3 years worth of working experience, which is kind of an impossible ask. But in fact, and you should really keep this in mind as you're searching for jobs, when they're asking for AI, they want linear regression, if that. If they're asking for machine learning, they want someone who wants to do something much more, like you can configure some AWS or some like Google Cloud stuff, set up big queries. That's really honestly, like as in, especially at junior level jobs, the sort of things, there's a big mismatch between what's asked in the job description and like what they expect you to bring as a candidate. So the first task of what I want you to think about today, and one of the sort of homework assignments, is to really think about like how you can, like as in get past your imposter syndrome when you see a wall of requirements. And we're going to go through that a little bit with some easier jobs, but that's one of the fundamental things, is that companies don't always know what they want in this process, and you shouldn't feel disinterested or discouraged because you don't see what they want. What's frequently happened is when you have a situation like this, there's a hiring manager, so the person who's probably going to hire you has written a set of things, and then they went back and looked at whoever previously had the job, what requirements they had, and then the recruiter has like some other things, and so it all gets mishmashed and nothing gets taken out, things just get added in, and that's why you end up with sort of scenarios like this. So, so that's the first thing that I wanted to tell you. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of talk about skills, and skills that are typically associated with data-associated roles. And I'm sure some of you have read a whole bunch of stuff about different types of data science and data analyst roles. And you kind of have an idea of where you fit. And I think you guys actually did have an idea of where you fit, because I didn't see people saying that they want to be a data analyst and a data engineer. Those are kind of two different skill sets. And so the first set of things are things like metric definition, building dashboards, descriptive analysis, and A/B testing and that sort of side of things. And those are what I'm going to call, in the course of this talk, what I call business focused roles. and at least at a junior level. The second set of roles are things like data modeling, statistical modeling and inference, and a little bit of machine learning, and those are sort of more core data science modeling skills. And everyone has different versions of this. This is what I found easier because I could actually analyze jobs with these skill sets according to my little schema. And the last one is things like that involves like foundation machine learning. We've got algorithmic optimization. We have data engineering, ETL, those sorts of things. And these are probably what I'd call production level things. These are distinct jobs, but I think they sort of require very hardcore programming skills versus when you get up here, having strong Excel skills, pivot table, all sorts of whatever else. I don't really know what those Excel skills are, but like really complex filtering and those sorts of things really help you in this one. Here we're talking about you need to probably have done some thinking about algorithmic optimization. And this middle point is you can do a lot of this stuff, maybe less dashboards, but with a lot of programming. And so they sort of separate, like just because you have programming skills doesn't mean you're overqualified for this. It's just that those are generally where they sort of separate in terms of optimal skill sets. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, but I'd like to actually hear of the group, just to understand sort of, just broadly, how many people are looking or do look or are doing these types of jobs? Core business jobs, strategy, pricing, financial analyst, data analyst, business analyst. Those are the types of jobs you're looking at. There's a few, okay. There's actually quite a few.
Yes, most of them.
What kind of titles, what kind of jobs are you searching for? What kind of jobs are you applying to? What kind of jobs have you applied to?
Business intelligence analyst.
Business intelligence analyst, okay, we'll talk a little bit about that.
Business analyst.
Business analyst,
Data analyst.
okay.
Yeah. Sometimes operations analyst.
That's really good. Now, is there a whiteboard? Is there any sort of board? No.
I'm guessing no.
Okay, cool. We'll just have to keep it in our head.
Well, someone's writing it down.
So those are very, very interesting and specific titles, right? So business intelligence is a really good title. It's a good thing to search for. The problem is it often business intelligence is almost an older title. It often ties into very specific BI tools like Power BI, things like that they often ask for experience on. So those are unfortunately really hard to learn if you're coming fresh out of university or you haven't had a chance to be exposed to those tools. But those are good.
But a lot of them are also increasingly asking for Tableau experience.
They are asking for
Tableau is
exactly
like Power BI or Tableau. So
when you're framing your resume, don't get deterred. If you're seeing one of those things, but you have something similar, like you almost have to like put it in your resume that I have Tableau experience in brackets like Power BI. Remember, the person looking at your resume is not always a very technical person. They just want to be able to kind of make sure that stuff is in there. You want to be able to have that conversation of what you can do, what type of modeling skill. So that's one. Power BI is a good one. Data analyst, business analyst. Now, are all of you familiar with simple SQL queries? Joins, lookups, wheres, all that stuff. Everyone who's applying for these types of jobs. So I'd say the easiest thing you could do, there's two things when you're applying to these types of jobs, two things. One, as much as possible, bring some domain expertise to bear if you've done something. So if you are lean finance, you studied some accounting in school, you did like something in that area, financial analyst becomes the logical place to spend time looking for, because you can architect a story. If you've done a lot of you've done Tableau, Power BI, those types of tools, then business intelligence becomes an area. If you're data analyst, if you're looking for those types of roles, it's really helpful to learn SQL. And the reason I say that is I'd say at least half of now non-technical jobs that we're seeing at the junior level that involve any sort of analyst ask for SQL. It's the single most, but when they say SQL, it's literally the amount of SQL you could learn in 6 hours. So don't get intimidated by it. Just spend that 6 hours and then take it off and say, I know SQL. It's that because SQL are ultimately doing a simple query to be able to figure out how to it's not hard. There's plenty of online courses. Don't get intimidated by it. But the minute you can say, I know SQL, at least at a basic level, it helps you with a lot of these jobs. So that's one. The two, after SQL, is Excel. That's the harder one. It's not hard. It takes 3 days if you want to do it right, and a little bit of practice, maybe a week. Let's round it up to a week. But when I say Excel, how many of you are power users of Excel? You feel comfortable? if you're looking for these types of jobs, you need to be a relative power user. When I say power user, again, it's a week of work, but we're talking about VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, COUNTIF, SUMIF. The problem is a lot of these jobs, you're going to get that first level. They're going to call you. They're going to give you an Excel test. That Excel test is going to be this stressful 1-hour test where you're going to do, VLOOKUP. And you want to know these things really easily. They're not hard. They're really very easy. If you do a little bit of VBA programming, that's fine, but rarely needed. Be able to do a pivot table in 30 seconds, that's super critical. So the minute you do that, this part is sorted. Questions on this, the first section? These types of jobs, are you looking at the right jobs? Your questions about how you, so I would look for financial analyst, I'd look for pricing, I'd look for strategy analyst.
I'm
I look
about
for,
to show a whole lot of
she's
those.
about to show all of those. There's a lot of data behind it, but
Yeah,
do you have
yeah.
questions on any of these skills? Sorry, I didn't mean to
No, that's
disturb.
okay, you're right. No, that's great. Does anyone have any questions on that sort of stuff? Like on Excel, like how many people would be interested in teaching an Excel course to the others of this sort of stuff? Because I mean, I think that would be really helpful for this
Yeah.
group if you don't have super awesome Excel.
There's also these things called like Training the Street. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. There's like a few online courses. They're like 99 bucks or whatever. But they are really helpful. And they have like in-person courses that you can kind of sign up for from time to time. They usually taught at business schools. They're really helpful. Like they do a weekend course or like a 3-day course and take you from not knowing Excel to being like really fast at it. And doing that before you kind of really deal with these interviews can be really helpful. Just again, it just gets you past that first hurdle for a lot of the business jobs. Questions?
Yeah.
Go for it.
It's more of like a thought, actually. I just found it really interesting that you just said that like SQL was like the easy part, but then like Excel was the harder part because like I mean like I went to a business school. I was taught like Excel and
Yeah.
stuff. I didn't really touch SQL, and I always had this mindset that like SQL was the more advanced stuff, and like that's kind of actually what I'm experiencing right now. I mean like. Well, SQL is easy to me, but like knowing more of the advanced stuff, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But you won't need to for most of it.
Well-
like that's the thing. Like you need to be a power Excel user, I think, is what you're saying.
The reason I say that is typically when the people who, the hiring managers who are asking for these skills, typically they know Excel, and they're going to give you these really difficult big spreadsheets on the job and ask you to make sense of it. That's going to require a decent amount of power Excel skills, but they don't often know SQL. And so often the SQL is, here's a connector, here's a looker database or whatever, pull a query, pull a visualization. You're not maintaining SQL, you're not like actively doing 3-part joins every day. You're doing simple lookups. And so it's 10 commands. If you figure out those 10 commands, you figured out 90% of what these jobs often require you to do in SQL. But you're right, there's a learning curve. But all I'm trying to tell you is how much SQL do you need to know to get the job? And how much Excel? They don't usually have SQL tests, they have Excel tests, unfortunately. So that's why the Excel part's a little bit of a hurdle. Any other questions on this part?
What kind of job requires you to have medical background?
A medical?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so there's a lot of pharma, health tech, health science companies in New York, and especially if you're looking for very data-oriented jobs, there's a lot of great healthcare, health tech, biotech companies in the city right now. There's, Cellmatics, there's Flatiron Health, there's,
There's like Clover
Policy
Health.
Genius, Clover Health. They're doing a combination of behavioral work and healthcare work. If you look at those jobs, unfortunately, none of them know how to title their jobs. You got to scan through a little bit.
Yeah, so things like clinical data analysts, they typically have, or like they have weird names, like really strange names. So like go look up.
Scientific curator.
Yeah, they have odd names. You'd never be able to predict them. But I would go and find the like biotech companies if you're looking to stay in New York, which is my guiding assumption right now, and find them and see what demented names they call it. But they're always like weird things.
To get data for this, we run a small search engine called tapwage.com. We have a lot of filters. We do the filters because we tabulate the jobs. One easy way to do, because we have filters like SQL. So one easy way to do that if you're looking at this is, we have a filter called data and analytics, is go filter New York, filter startups, filter health tech, healthcare, and filter data analytics or filter SQL, you'll basically get a list of 400 jobs that you can apply to
It's like a
that are very,
super
very.
easy SQL join.
It's basically a SQL join that I did to make it easier for us. Yes, that's right. But you can, that's an easy way to do it. And if you have questions, just ask us. We'll show you how to kind of construct that filter.
Yeah,
and
but
get
health
those jobs.
insurance companies especially are super, like Aetna, all of them have roles for, like I looked at their jobs and they're like having a background in healthcare of any type, whether you were
Brilliant.
like trained as a nurse or something, like
Yeah.
just knowing something about medical stuff is a huge
Yeah.
benefit to them. Because I think you actually know what the diseases are, what they map to, like you have a sense of that process. So it's actually, they don't want necessarily clinical experience, but having that helps.
There's also a lot of cool nonprofits looking for, like a new nonprofits looking for healthcare-oriented jobs with data and analytics. There's a bunch, in New York especially. So the other two buckets, I know there's not that many people in the other two buckets, so
Oh,
we'll
yeah,
just
yeah.
go through that.
Yeah.
Modeling bucket. Questions, how many people are broadly looking at
In
this?
modeling.
Modeling, okay. Questions, what types of jobs are you looking for?
Data scientist.
Data scientist, the classic,
Yeah.
the one and only. Are you looking for predictive science or prediction modeler?
Yeah,
Or maybe you are? Okay, you gotta there's again, old school companies will call it decision science, prediction modeler, data modeling. Oh my God, there's some awful titles. But so again, here, if you're looking at it, try and look for jobs that have regression in them or have R in them. Presumably, you know R. At this point, you probably don't need to know Python, but R is really helpful, and presumably you've got some experience with regression. Again, machine learning, if they have it, awesome. Like I had a customer who's a finance head, and he had this job for financial analyst. Oh my God. He asked for machine learning and data science and great. So we helped him rejig the job, and he's getting all these great people with machine learning, data science. He's like, yeah, but they don't know how to do like financial accounting. And I'm like, but why? Why do you want like everything? So I'm like, do you know machine learning? He's like, no, I just want them to know it. So that's the thing. People ask, but they don't necessarily know what they're asking for. So don't feel intimidated. Plus, like, how hard is it to learn machine learning?
Yeah, you just HTO over that stuff. It's
Exactly.
fine. And how many productions of data engineers?
Yeah, how many are we
looking
talking
at,
about here?
Like
Hardcore.
hardcore people. We have people
Yeah.
who are applying for this. Okay,
Now,
so
at
there's a little bit
this-
of overlap. Yeah.
Hopefully, again, you know multiple programming languages. Hopefully it's very comfortable in R, but very rarely are people doing production level stuff in R. Really, you're doing production level stuff in Go or Python, Haskell, one of those types
Java.
of tools. Java often,
Yeah, but they do.
I don't ever want to do Java. I used to do Java. Hopefully, get really well, or at least reasonably well. You can commit stuff, you can merge a commit every now and then. That'll be amazing. Don't get intimidated by ETL. Like a lot of these things will ask you for ETL skills and doesn't really mean anything except that like I just need to be able to transfer data from one server to another. It's not that hard. Like if you can do a REST API, you can do ETL. So this one is not hard, but you may get like asked about, have you done like production? This is where, oh, I've done a Kaggle competition. This is where that's kind of almost helpful. But in this stuff, you really don't need to get that complicated yet.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about job titles, and the reason why that's really important, as I sort of talked about in my last talk, was that titles are what drives the search results. So you search for data scientists, you will predominantly get roles that are titled data scientists, because that's how search works, right? And so what I wanted to do was to talk about what are conventional titles for these different processes, which a lot of you know. You're all looking for data analyst roles, you're looking for data science, you're looking for data engineer roles. And then when we look at it, things that are a bit more businessy, so a data analyst might expect you to have a little bit of R, business analyst less so, quant analyst might require you to have a little bit more statistical sort of underpinnings, and we have ML engineers and software engineers. And I'm really sorry about the transitions for this. And then we have on this end, we have sort of BI analysts, so business intelligence analysts, we have product analysts, which are again on the business side of things. They probably require, they require different skills. So BI analysts will want you to integrate with dashboards or set up dashboards and things like that. A product analyst having good Excel skills is probably really important there. But also you have things like product data analyst, which is kind of an unusual one, as is associate data scientist, which is which is a
Associate data science is a good one. That's
That's
like a
a-
straight up entry level job.
fantastic job because very few people apply to those ones, and
Yeah.
they just get under applied to, right? You sometimes have, so Lyft has now started, and a bunch of these other Silicon Valley startups and stuff have started calling data scientists research scientists. So that's another thing to look for because it's kind of a rare thing. And then we have things like, so infrastructure engineer, and then every combination of data platform engineer, data infrastructure engineer, those are very like unsearched for. And then, you know, you have things like BI developers that sit on the back end in terms of integrating. They're the ones who actually write the code to set up the BI like pipelines.
Yeah. If you want to live in Wisconsin and do Cognos reporting, that's the job for you.
I mean, they still have those jobs in New York.
But
so-
business analyst, the only one, this is a really good one. Unfortunately, there's a couple more. If you're looking at startups specifically, BizOps, that's a really good one. They call it BizOps, BIZOPS, it's idiotic. They often look for some consulting experience, 1 or 2 years, but you don't have to have it. But if you can do SQL and a lot of analytics, BizOps is a really good role for you there. The
Oh, yeah.
problem with business analyst in general is all the SAP jobs are often called business analysts. So you're going to get a whole bunch of crappy SAP jobs. Sucks to be you. You just got to keep scrolling. There's a lot of great HR analyst positions. So as increasingly, companies are hiring really good analytical people to fill roles in talent, to do compensation benchmarking, to do predictions on when people will leave, how to hire, how to make HR spend more efficient. It's a very rare. They don't find a lot of people. So again, with this one, you got to be creative. It's HR analyst, it's people analyst, people scientist, people data scientist, talent acquisition analyst. There's 50 different ways that they can express HR, people, title, compensation, etc. But it's one of those roles that doesn't get applied to a lot, and it's actually you're working with really interesting data sets, and you're working with very interesting people, and you have a chance to really make an impact in an organization. So this becomes a really interesting career path.
So let me precuss this a little bit. Two things I want to say. First is that all of the information that are on these slides, I have a GitHub thing, so you don't have to like furiously type them down. They will be available afterwards because my point is not to make you see this in the thing. What I was talking about on search though is just to be very creative with when you're searching for things. If you're looking, so I know you're probably searching for data analyst and you've got like location New York, right? But if you write data analyst New York, you will get jobs that are very rarely applied to because when people are searching for data analyst, New York itself in the title gets penalized a little bit, and so it doesn't come up as often. And those jobs tend to, from what we see from our customers and things like that, they do worse. Does that make sense? So you search for things that have unusual things in the title. I've already talked to you guys about senior. If it says this, so you've only got like, you only need 2 years worth of experience, Sherman, then ignore what it's called. Like the name of the thing is kind of nonsense. So these are all things that basically they present arbitrage opportunities for you because you've got fewer views, that means fewer applications,
Let's
right?
talk about the ultimate arbitrage opportunity. Search with a typo. Like search just ANLYST. There's like 20 jobs out there that nobody's ever seen or applying to. And you could be there. Search for manger instead of manager. There's 1,800 jobs that have titled manger from Tesla, PricewaterhouseCoopers, whatnot. Nobody's applying to them.
Apparently there's 46,000 people on LinkedIn whose jobs are manager. So I mean, I think those are the people
Yeah, those
who
are
are
the
applying
people.
for these jobs.
But-
So I mean, I know we're talking a lot about titles, but the whole point of this is these are very underrepresented. So data associates are, for example, another type of role. And so this is, again, to add to your lexicon of things that you search for, because there's lots of data associate positions, but they don't have a lot of applications. And so people aren't finding them because they're not looking for them. And so there's that whole sort of.
And if you're on LinkedIn and you look at these, you can see how many, that is, you can see how many views a job has and how many applications a job has, right? So there's tons and tons of these jobs that have like 20 applicants or less. Even after 4 or 6 weeks, boom, get in there, you've got a decent chance at it. Like, but you go to the big companies, the Squarespace, the Facebooks, the BuzzFeeds and all that, they're like 400 applications, even if they get a spelling mistake. It's just allocating your time to where you've got a really good shot is the best sort of way for you to do this.
Okay. So the thing that I wanted to tell you guys was that I looked at all of the data science and analyst roles, and I sort of split them up into these 3 groups. And actually, like, the reason why we've been talking a lot about this business group is actually, like, they have 3 times as many roles. at the junior level than the other sorts of roles. So these tend to be like as a company matures, or as a company that's a tech company matures, you know, you start going towards this end. Most companies, the Coca-Colas of the world and things like that, don't have that much stuff in production. They have but they have a lot of need in like basic business analytics, and so that's why I was sort of focusing on this. And that's why the next page.
And honestly, that's the better career path is in business analytics.
Yeah. So these are the sorts of functional roles within different types of companies and the different types of titles that they give those, which I think are really interesting because they give you actually a career path within that, right? Like no one searches for web analyst or SEO analyst, right? But if you've ever run like Google like analytics, like that's one of the requirements. It's a very easy thing to learn.
Start a website, do Google Analytics, done.
Yeah,
I've
actually,
got that skill set.
Put it
It's
on
like
the
30
TDP's
minutes.
website. Maybe you could be part of their web posters and volunteer for that, because that's exactly the kind of thing that you actually, it helps to have like some specific expertise. Amit talked a little bit about human resources. We need, like, that's the biggest area I think that's going to see a lot of growth in terms of like, that's one area that's been underdone, and people are now like, all sorts of companies are growing. And you even
That's also for New York.
Yeah.
Like these jobs are all like, but these in New York.
These tend to be in New York. They tend to even be at really sexy companies because they just don't have a lot of interest in it. And they, you know, you're looking at compensation, you get a very interesting view of companies. And we have also these things. So sometimes, you know, things are called sales engineers. And actually it wasn't just, it's a lot of West Coast companies and East Coast companies that call them sales engineers. You basically are very analytic
Or
focused
customer
with sales.
success engineer, that's another one.
Yeah, so that's,
Really just, yeah.
so you have like financial, like as you have revenue engineers, they have all of these things. So again, add to your lexicon of weird search materials. Okay, job app success. Number one is to like apply for the jobs that like everyone else doesn't think about that much, right? Number two that I wanted to talk about, and before I start talking about it, does anyone have any questions about the earlier stuff? Like I know we spoke a lot about search, but actually it's very, very important in terms of making sure you get to the right type of jobs. Any questions about search? About companies? Yeah.
So for like a data scientist jobs,
Yeah.
most of them requires PhD level.
Yeah.
But if I have only like master, is that fine?
See, very rarely do they require. They all say PhD preferred. Don't let
Yeah.
that fool you.
Okay.
They don't need a PhD. There's no science behind why. We're trying to get our customers to stop saying that because it deters. People are like, oh, I need a PhD. Because you don't need a PhD.
Yeah.
You don't need an MBA. You don't need a PhD. Just have the skill set in your resume and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a really solid resume, I know lots of people, like I think this is increasingly changing, but I know a couple of years ago it's very difficult to see data science roles that they said they'd always say PhD required. Now they're sort of being like, it's preferred, because I think if you have like a solid Kaggle or like a lot of very solid data science projects, it's much easier to get away with, if that makes sense.
And they just need so much talent.
Yeah.
Like there's not enough PhDs in this country to fill all the data science.
Well, and they're
roles.
also not like trained in the like specific skill sets that you need. So I'm like, if you have that skill set training, I think it makes a lot of difference, right? Like as in someone who came out of I'm a biology PhD, I wouldn't be able to do a data science role straight out of my PhD. Like that's silly to request that from me versus someone who came out of a bachelor's and can do actual like machine learning or can write production level code. Those are different requirements.
That said though, if you're looking at a PhD roles, like, yeah, don't look at like the really large tech companies. Like you're gonna get mostly PhDs applying to like Facebook or Apple or Google. Like if you're looking at smaller startups, you're looking at traditional companies, PhD preferred, ignore. Easy to get it.
So there is another saying from another recruiter saying that basically I'm changing my career path. So I had more like management degree, but I'm also learning data analysis. So there's a saying say for me, I could be just filtered out in the first round because my background or my degree doesn't match. Because most of this kind of job they want math, data science, or computer science. So is there any trick or any way that we can still survive from that?
So what is your degree exactly?
Mine is management and system, but
Oh,
all the
that's fine.
classes I take, but
Well then don't list your degree.
Because
As in,
I-
don't list the major, just list your degree. You graduated this college, let them have a conversation with you.
okay, because I know many of HR, are they using the keyword filter?
They are and they aren't. Like, to be honest, there's this sort of thing that like a lot of them are using keywords and all that, and it's not 100% true. The bigger problem is that they get 50 resumes, they don't actually go through those 50 resumes at all. So the bigger problem is unless you get through to the right person or you've got all the right skills up there, they're just not going to find you. And you're right, it's a little harder if you don't have that specific degree, but you know, I guarantee you can change, maybe you want to do this as an experiment, change your degree to mathematics and see if it changes your phone calls. I mean, I guess it won't. My guess is it won't really, because it's not, that effect is not that, like it's not that subtle. The bigger problem is just that they're ignoring a lot of the applications that they get internally anyway. So one of the things, so now it's probably a good prelude to this section. When you're applying, how many of you are actually finding who the recruiter is and then contacting the recruiter on LinkedIn? Yikes. Okay, so, well, that's the start. Every company has their recruiters on LinkedIn. They all have open emails. Very first thing, if you can get to somebody deeper in the organization, if you can get to a friend, if you can get to a warm lead, phenomenal. Because your chances go up 4, 5, 6 times. But if you can't, you can definitely get to a recruiter. And you can definitely write that recruiter email that's no more than 4 sentences. Please don't send them that 17 paragraph about why you are like destined for this role. 4 sentences that you have the skills, you'd be a great fit, you'd love to chat. And you're still probably going to get rejected a lot of times, but your chances are going to double of getting a call.
Yeah, so I think this was just like the thing that I mentioned earlier, is that like you have a 1 in 100 chance of getting an interview when you apply totally cold, and it gets warmer as we go higher up, right? So recruiters are warm bodies and they're useful to sort of contact. Sources are slightly warmer. These are people who contact you on LinkedIn, which I'm sure not many people are experiencing except for maybe Robin. And then there's obviously directly into the hiring manager. So what did I want to say about this? Okay, so we have a whole range of different sort of attributes, right? Like you can apply, if you have the option of applying either through Indeed or LinkedIn, I would pick LinkedIn because they tend to look at that, companies tend to look at that a little bit more. If the company, like if the job is on both of them, because they actually kind of pay for that one. If you go apply through the company job site itself, so you go back, you go to their career section and you go through their website, they look at that a little bit more than they do through Indeed, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, because they tend to be...
Yeah, throw away Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter.
Yeah, never apply through those, right?
Indeed's fine.
Indeed's okay, but they get a lot. You know, slightly warmer are things like company events. So when companies host meetups, do frequent searches for meetups and things like that. Even if it's tangentially interested, they're usually recruiting, and so you'll get to meet a recruiter there. And you are a warm body and a human being at that point. Emailing the recruiter, so other than emailing the recruiter, you can also just find their emails online. So after you find out their names, you can kind of generally use your data science sleuthing skills to figure out what their email is. And there are,
Emailhunter.co.
Emailhunter.co?
I use it like 10 times a day.
Yeah.
Not with recruiters, obviously. But actually with recruiters, because my customers are recruiters.
And then I think the other, as we get warmer, so you know, if someone someone in the company and they can refer you to a recruiter, that's also awesome. So say you want to work at the New York Times and Robin knows our recruiters.
Yeah.
You can email Robin with a short, again, 4-sentence description of what you want to do, and he'll forward it on to the recruiter, and that's actually warmer, so it's like meeting them. And then at this end, we have, you know, invitation by Sourcer, or like you have someone who knows the hiring manager, which is quite difficult sometimes to figure out who the hiring manager is, but if you know a couple of people in the organization, you can kind of figure it out eventually. There's someone who will know. So that's the warmest. That's kind of like happens in 1 in 10 times for most people if you can find someone. Like it's very rare. But I think these are things that you can actually do that improve your chances like threefold, which is kind of crazy to me. If you know, you don't need to have a huge network to do that.
Well, 2 rules. One is don't go to a recruiter and be like, are you hiring? That's kind of stupid. You go to a recruiter and be like, this job, I'm good for this specific, make their lives easier. So you've got to be like, this is a job, this is why I'm a good fit. That's 1. Same with anybody. 2 is, be careful with these, right? You can get into their system. Some companies, if they've rejected you once, they may not consider you for another couple of years. So you want to go in for the right job. if you're going to take a personal favor and kind of get to somebody within the company, if you're going to get into their system, use it for the job that you genuinely feel you're qualified for, you genuinely feel you have a chance at. Don't just spray and pray. But definitely sort of use these mechanisms to get to people.
Okay, so LinkedIn connections. So for example, and this is a job that I was looking at, and I wanted to show you guys two things if you're not aware of them. Not everyone knows. Not every job has this, but some jobs do. And that is this thing, is that it allows you to contact, in this case it's a recruiter, sometimes it's a hiring manager, directly. So it's this little box, it's not always there on every job, but it's helpful. I mean, the other thing is, like, I know lots of people at New York Times, and so I also have this other option, which you guys do too, which is the two connections that can refer me. And so what I would tell you to do is help Robin identify the recruiter or hiring manager and get him to refer you to that person. So you can go through her, and then you can also go through Robin, but let Robin know that you've gone through her as well, so that Robin doesn't get into a lot of trouble.
Let me tell you a stalkerish way to take this to the next level that I highly recommend. We know that second connections can really help you. I like to flip it around. So it's your network. You start with your network, but you start with the 5 people who will do anything for you, right? They'll ask a favor for you. You look at their network. So I go through those 5 people, and I go through every one of their 500 idiotic contacts on LinkedIn. That's a lot of contacts. It's 2,500 contacts. And then I figure out, okay, who do they know? What companies are they hiring? So they make a list of like the 30 companies that people who know people. And then look at those 30 companies' jobs. So find in each of those 30 companies, what's that perfect fit job? So then instead of looking at jobs and then hoping to find somebody and then look for a job. There's always a job. There's always a job. If you're looking at a Coca-Cola or like whatever, there's always a job for you.
Okay, so the other thing is, when you want Robin to help you, the first thing is, like, for any second or third connection, right? If he isn't your total best friend in the world, you really have to take time.
Even if he is your best friend, like, just make it easy for him.
You've got to personalize a message. So, like, tell them about your connection to them, offer to help out with the TDP, I don't know, volunteer for a committee or two.
Yeah, we need volunteers.
Yeah, they need volunteers.
But give them a blurb, like give them like this is the paragraph about me and why I'm a good fit for a paragraph, not 4 paragraphs, a paragraph that they can copy and paste in that forward email without having to like draft something for you, and that makes a huge difference.
And the other part of it is be really specific in your ask. So I'm gonna just pre-post this in terms of saying, what job are you interested in? Give them a link. If you're asking for a specific job that you're interested in, send them your CV so that they don't have to go back and forth with you, right? Like, it's out there, they can just send it on, they don't have to think about it. But maybe you're interested in just asking about the data science group at New York Times and things like that. You have to buy Robin a couple of cups of coffee for that to happen, and you're just going to make it super easy for him. So you're going to come to his workplace and do whatever. If you need to get his laundry for him, you've got to do that. But like, you've got to be super specific in your ask, I think, because
don't
like.
Get laundry for people. I don't want this misinterpreted.
Yeah, no, joking.
Coffee.
Coffee is good, but like, it's like this is a bigger ask actually than to be like, can you just forward my job to this? So don't feel like you have to take all of Robin's time up or anyone else's time up just because you want to get a sense of this. If you've already got your job in mind, let them know.
But if it's a big company, like Fortune 500 big public company, they have an employee referral system. If you get the job, your friend gets $5,000 or something. So don't feel bad asking for that, because that's no skin off their back, even if you're not 100% fit. So you should always ask for that. But if you're asking for, can you connect me to the hiring manager, that's where you've got their reputations on the line, your reputation's on the line. You've got to be sure that that fits correct, and you've got to be very delicate with that request.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about networking and access to hiring managers, right? And this is the last part of what I want to talk about. Meetups and Slack, which are, again, just basic networking stuff. I wanted to highlight a couple of data-focused groups that we have in the city. I'm going to send you guys a link of all of this stuff so you don't have to worry about it. We have both general groups. These are all groups that I or someone who I really trust have been to, so they have good code of conduct and they're generally pleasant places to be. And some of them are like language or platform focused, and some of them are just generally like data viz or like storytelling and things like that. I know of all the affinity groups, so for the women in this room, there's a whole lot of them. They do all sorts of things. It's a really awesome environment, and I can't recommend Our Ladies more than anything else, but obviously you guys have your own amazing affinity group too. Unfortunately, like I'm not aware of, like as in I think there is Lesbians Who Tech as well, and there's some other sorts of smaller affinity groups. I'm not aware of them, but like if you guys want to share them, that's great as well. But these are really helpful sort of, they tend to be smaller groups, and so they're really helpful contexts in which to like get to know people, and they're always hosted at companies that are hiring, because that's why companies agree to host them. So going to meetups is really important, but the second part of this is all of these meetups have their own Slack groups. And the Slack groups are really cool because they have this thing called the jobs hashtag, and essentially you get access to hiring managers at really big companies because they're specifically like, as in this is my women in, I think, machine learning thing. They're like literally like, DM me if you have questions, it's my team. So you have a direct line to the hiring manager by joining these Slack groups. So I would highly recommend going to as many of these meetups and joining as many of these groups if you're actively job searching, because it's like, even if you don't get to that job, like you'll meet someone at Medium, which is kind of cool, or any other early stage startup.
So 2 points. The first is there's a few specific meetups that might be more tailored. Like there's an HR analytics meetup. It's only about a few hundred people. It's really, really good if you're specifically wanting to focus on HR analytics. And there's very senior people at that. There's a strategy analytics meetup in New York. So if you can figure out which, especially if you're looking at that first tier of business analyst type jobs, you can figure out that broader niche where you fit, you can dive into it. That makes you get a much better connection. Second, how many of you have been to these meetups before? Any sorts of meetups? Okay. Now, how many of you who've gone to these meetups have, in the first meetup, told people you're looking for a job? Bzz, wrong answer. Don't do that. That's what the Slack groups are for and all that. Just be nice, be memorable. Nobody wants to be like, oh, I'm looking for a job. Just as much as possible when you're having your first few meetings at these meetups, just go in and ask questions about what people do and tell them how hard and amazing their jobs are, and talk about some cool project you've been working on, and don't bring up what you do or the fact that you're looking for a job unless you've been asked. Because you don't want them to just be like, oh, this person's looking for a job, I'm gonna go talk to somebody else. Just be the nice, friendly person so that when that position opens up on Slack, boom, you ask for it. At least initially. After the third event, sure, tell people you're looking. But just sort of hold back a little bit. I know it's hard though, because when you're looking for a job, that's all you can think about.
But increasingly at these meetups, like it's not just the NY Hackar, like they're like always at the start, they're like, so-and-so, like who's hiring, right? That's usually one of the first questions that they ask.
Yeah.
And so that's actually, they do that at all the other tech meetups. So like, feel free to go up to those people
Yeah,
who are
of
actually
course.
hiring and let them know.
Have people gone to NY Hackar? Or is everyone familiar? It's simply, like even if, I don't even program in R, I program in Python. But NY Hackar is like literally the best data science meetup I've been to in the city from a job standpoint. Like there's always a lot of people hiring. There's a lot of different types of jobs, different types of companies, very welcoming group of people. The pizza finishes early, so be a little bit early because you spend $5 on it. Pizza is okay sometimes. I don't know about that.
You've
but
been to
seriously,
better ones than we have.
if you're looking for a job in anything to do with data, I hope just like all of you will show up for that specific meetup. It's probably the best in the city.
Yeah, so they call themselves an NY Hackar, but they're like the open statistical, so they do stuff in Stan, they do stuff in all sorts of things. So like sometimes it's R packages, sometimes it's broader statistical principles, so it's actually very varied. But I'll send you a link to that. So now we're into the fun part of what we're doing, which is resume tailoring. You seem so excited. So,
If you do the first two things right, the resume is not going to matter.
Yeah.
Like, you could print it on a newspaper, and nobody would care.
pretty
But
much. I
it
know
matters.
you don't believe us, but it's really true.
Before you start, what do you think the purpose of a resume is? Anybody? Anybody? Sure.
Briefly tell the people.
Sure, but what's your goal by writing a
To
resume?
the job.
That's the wrong answer. It's to get the interview. It's not to get the job. The goal of your resume is a teaser trailer to your life. And think about every teaser trailer you've watched about the movies. Do they tell you the big melodramatic scene where the guy's mother dies? No. It's bang, bang, funny joke, bang, bang, beautiful, tied up together. That's your resume. It's impactful, it's powerful, it tells the highlights reel of your life without the sob stories and the struggles. You save all that for the interview. The interview is the full movie. So, proceed.
So we are coming back again to robots and things that sort of might kick out your resumes. And there's a bunch of these articles on the internet. One of the things I wanted to do in this session is to tell you, we work with a lot of ATSs on the back end, and their robots aren't very powerful. Typically their robots are 22-year-olds who are recruiters, and they're the ones that have to manage it. But the key takeaways from a lot of these sorts of articles is, well, the most important takeaway is, give us some money and we'll compare your resume to the job description so our robots can beat these robots. And so that's one of the things I want to take on. They also tell you to use exact keywords. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And the last thing is that they talk about a lot is in terms of resume structure. So it's like, have your structure to be this exact structure because it makes life easier. Now, there's structure and then there's structure, right? Like there's a lot of structures that you have to use a structure that works for you, that tells your story, but that is reasonably standard. But it's okay. These sorts of articles make you scared that if you put an awards section, suddenly like no one's gonna be able to review your resume, or if you don't use this font, like it won't be able to review, they can review your resume. It's not the problem. So what I wanted to bring up here is usually you have 22-year-olds who very rarely, especially if you're looking at big companies, they're not technical recruiters. So they don't really understand the difference between Python and Django, or like R and Java, or Java and JavaScript, for example. And so to that extent, some of this advice, like you kind of have to sort of take, but I wouldn't sort of get really nitpicky about it. So they'll say stuff like you can't reconcile project managed versus project managed. Yes, they can. That's just like, as in any text search can do that. But you want to make sure that it's very clear that like you put in 3 different places that you know JavaScript, so you know Java, Java, so you know J2EE, like as in the 3 different ways you can talk that you know about that format.
Well, just put in what they're looking for in the job description. Really, like how many of you are actually tailoring your resume for each application you post? 1. Come on. Send fewer applications, but tailor them. There's no point applying to 100 companies and feeling depression of 100 rejections. It's not worth it. Apply to 30, but do it right, take it easy, and write a short cover note. Write that resume. So most of your resume will stay the same. But that top piece of your resume where your skills or whatever,
none of these 2 people have,
your
anyway.
projects, it's going to change a little bit. You're going to change it a little bit to include, to make it sound like the job description, but do that 15 minutes of work, because that's otherwise what's the point?
That's the first thing actually we're going to do as like a little group thing. So these are just 2 different types of formats of resumes. I think they're both very impactful. This is someone who has an awful lot of experience, and he's probably like one of the top like machine learning people in the world, who has this very awesome available resume. This is just a curtailed version of it. I mean, this is what other people, like, as in you can have all sorts of things. The things that I want to highlight about them is it's really easy to find the information that you need. It's all justified, it's like the right format. I know I can figure out what dates they are by looking at it quickly, and that's actually really important. The other thing that they both do is that they sort of mention projects or skills. They don't put like little numbers or emojis or anything next to them. You can actually figure out what skills they have very quickly. And like you're drawn to the key points that you need to. So I don't really care which format. On the margin, and most of you guys have something like this, I would prefer this, but like that's fine too. Like I know plenty of really prominent data scientists who set up their resume in sort of more visual formats. It doesn't matter.
Try and stick to this.
Yeah.
Try and stick to this.
Yeah.
The more standard it looks, the better and easier it is on everything.
But the one thing that I want to highlight to you guys is it's super easy in this one, from the formatting, from every sort of visual cue, to figure out like what is what. So it's okay to use both bold and italics and things like that, just as long as it's very easy to find that information. This is one of our first ones. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight is this is one of our, the people who's here, who's got an amazing resume actually, but this is what it looked like when I got it. And that's because Google Documents screws up resumes, and it's something to be aware of, because then I can't find the information that I need to find, and as a recruiter, I'd just be really irritated at this resume to be like, why can't they justify it, even though I know on her website she has a perfectly justified version. So it's one thing just to be aware of.
Only send resumes in PDF format.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's the other thing. They tell you not to in those things. They tell you to send in doc or text format, but really
No,
send them
no.
in PDF so you know exactly how they look. Yeah, they
Put
do.
it in both if you need to. But.
Yeah. But what I really like about this resume is, I mean, she's this, who is it? Is anyone here who this is that I'm complimenting so much? Yeah, you're very accomplished. But there are two things that are a little bit wrong with your thing. And this is, I think this goes for everyone. The first thing is, I don't know what an EP credential is. And if I don't know what an EP credential is and I'm an international, I don't think American hiring managers know what an EP credential is. And I know that's something that tells, I've now looked it up and I know
Is
that.
that like a summa cum laude or?
No.
Because this is from this university is from Taiwan, so they want to make sure your GPA is competitive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But you already have the GPA there.
you have the GPA there.
Yeah, but this is measured by EP potential. It's kind of easy.
That's a third party who
Third party.
who
Validate.
recognize, yeah.
Oh.
To say, oh, this is your real grade. This is not something made.
Oh
Okay.
wow.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair
So
enough.
I mean,
I mean, I don't know.
so it's fine. I think one of the things that I would have suggested is like, yeah, I thought it was a summa cum laude. And actually, because you have a 4.0, I'm like, one of the things to mention is equivalent to what it is in American grades. So I'm guessing it's a 4.0, but it's just like, make it really clear to them. So if it's a 4.0, I think a summa cum laude is definitely, you've got first class honors. All of you guys had amazing grades from what I saw. So, I mean, I think it's worthwhile to say equivalent to this honor. So that it's very clear in the eyes of the hiring managers that these are great grades. That it's not just like something that you've made up. Like
I mean, I would even put in things like, oh, top 2 university in Asia or whatever. Like, you know, just give people haven't heard of stuff outside of the US, and so give them context as to how difficult it is to get into these universities, how competitive it is. I was selected as 50 amongst like 5,000 people. Whatever it helps to sort of tell your story more effectively.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing that I would do is, I notice you guys have a lot of acronyms in there that just slows people down. So get rid of these sorts of things and like use that space in terms of just getting the point of the competitiveness aside. Because then I'm looking at NCTU and I'm like, where am I going to see that on the resume? I've got to remember that. And you're not going to see it anywhere else on the resume, hopefully. Same thing with NCKU. So it's fine to just like
I
drop
mean, I'd
that
even
sort
get
of
rid
stuff.
of Teachers College. Just have Columbia University. Why confuse them?
Yeah,
Columbia
so-
University, everyone recognizes. Just
Yeah.
start with that.
You did that too. You guys also mentioned like the graduate school or whatever. Like you don't need to say that. Just say the university so that they know exactly, like as in otherwise it looks like it's a less competitive part of Columbia University because hiring managers don't know that. Yes.
Sally mentioned that it's a good idea to put, for example, the rank of this schools in Asia.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a good rank, I mean, don't put it if it's like 50 out of 50 or something. I mean, like I went to like a Singapore university nobody's ever heard of it for good reason. But,
Where it's just to put it.
oh, I just put it like,
Just here.
instead of putting NCTU, I put, like in brackets, I put that. Brackets, I put, oh, second best university in Taiwan. Even if it isn't, just say it is. Like, I mean, what do they know?
They're not going to look it up.
You know, top university. Like,
Yeah.
Have you ever seen any resume written?
yeah, mine. No, I'm kidding. I've seen resumes. Yes, I have. I have. The honest answer is, I don't think are there Americans in this audience? Because Americans are not modest about their achievements or about where they went. You'll find resumes really lean into things, and I think you should too. You should, like, every single word in this resume, you've got to analyze, does it belong? Does NCTU belong? No, get rid of it. Does every single word of this, do I need to put Taiwanese literature? No, get rid of it. Like, just put BA. Let them ask. No one's going to reject you because you didn't tell them what you did a BA in. Just get rid of it. Every single word, get asked, does it belong? And then replace it with the words that do matter. Like giving them a sense of how competitive it was, how good your university was, all of those things.
Yeah, especially because like, I mean, yeah, like I don't know if these are 2 separate degrees. I know a lot of you guys have 2 separate degrees, right? Like put the BA economics first because that's like your quantitative sort of association with things.
In fact, only put your BA economics.
Yeah,
Just
like
get rid of everything else.
they don't need to know, like as in you have other degrees, it's okay, you're allowed to have them. And I like that you had sort of concentration on courseworks and things like that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Does anyone have questions while we're... So like, get them to understand your, like, as in educational experiences, because like they all, I mean, hiring managers and stuff have a sense of American universities, they don't have a sense of universities from elsewhere. Let me go on. So we did that. All right, my favorite.
Oh my. Wow, there's a lot of space in this one, huh?
Yeah, because it's gonna, no, this is totally made up. It's not in this room, thankfully. Xinyan.
Oh, that's right.
So what we're gonna do now is just go through the resumes in general, I think, in terms of, so we spoke a little bit about education. And what I wanted to show you guys is, the first thing that I wanted to talk about was the 4 Ws of data science projects, right? So these are things that you'll mention in your experience section. These are things that you might mention in your education section. So if you don't have a lot of like work experience, that's a helpful thing. And so that was how to contextualize your experience and make every line work for you. So this is one of my favorite resumes. This is a section that she had in her resume that was her data science projects. And she describe them in terms of art. So I want you guys to analyze this and tell me what you think was the problem with describing your sort of experience like this.
What do you mean problem?
Do you think that this is, yes?
I think like unless I'm hiring from New York City, I don't really care what specific project. Like the highlighted part was the domain expertise.
Okay.
So I think like unless it's tailored towards like Yelp or policies.
That's great. So the domain expertise isn't super clear. Any other sort of problems with this? Yes.
In terms of putting the data source, maybe she should just emphasize what's the skill she used, like web scraping, blah, 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 blah.
Excellent.
Or analysis.
Source of the data isn't super clear, and that's really helpful from a data science perspective to know how that data was gotten. Okay, anything else? Yes?
And I think it's just too heavy on one aspect. Like these are all our project. Like if there are like 2 or 3, that's enough. I don't need to know.
Yeah. So there's
15 packages.
there's kind of a lot of different projects, and so some of them are like more useful, right? This one I think we ended up keeping because it's a Shiny app, and that's a little different to the development of some of this stuff, right? These are a lot of data munging and data visualization. So you want to show the spectrum of things you do. So I think we ended up with 3 only in the end. What else?
Just think about the usage of words instead of using use.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of competitiveness.
Use some other words.
Yeah. So there is a lot of competitiveness. So I think the things that I came up with, and I'm just going to scroll down because it's going to be going slow. The first thing is that we emphasize tools a lot more than the analysis that she did. So in this one, it's like used all of these things, which is exactly your point. It's like, these are the tools I use to do this, right? The second is like, how big are the projects? So how big is the size of the data set that you're using? How relevant is the data set? How much modifying did you have to do? And then the third thing is in terms of why you did the analysis and why, and I think that goes to Robin's point about like, why, like what's the purpose of all of this? And I think there was a 4th one, which is there's a little bit of a lack of prioritization. So we have a lot of options, but we didn't know which ones were the most important.
Yeah.
So like I think what we ended up doing in the end, just to give you guys a bit of context state, is we reworked them, but of the projects, I think we kept one of these. We kept the network one because like showing that you have graph network expertise is really helpful, and having an app expertise writing R Shiny is very different to writing the rest of these. But the other thing that this is it's very R heavy. So like if you don't know what those packages are, it's really hard to understand what she did.
And R isn't that popular in most older workplaces just yet.
So these are the 4 Ws, and we're going to go through actually an example of this and talk about so how we go about it, and take hopefully, and then the second part of it will be we'll take one of your examples of your job things and we'll go through it. So the first is, where did you get the data from? Was it scraping? Was it API? Was it database? Did you SQL database? Where the hell was the data? Second is, how big was a data set? So again, that's quantifying the numbers. It's one of the things that we do in resumes quite often. I think it's really important to talk about why you did the analysis. So yeah, a lot of these are class projects, right? But you want to know, like, what was the question, what was the hypothesis? And the last part is what? So what's the analysis you did? Was it descriptive? Was it predictive? And what skills or packages or libraries did you use? So putting them at the end to be like, we did this in order to do that, and then we really de-emphasize the skills and packages. Essentially, the packages is sort of just like another mention of the packages, because you'll have it mentioned in different sections. So any questions here? Yeah.
How many pages does this person have in her resume?
One.
So she's able to fit
She does.
both of
She
Give
did.
me a microscope. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
Read it. No.
No.
One-page resumes, always.
No, she did fit that because she really cut down on some of the other sections, which we had to, like, as in we cut this so we could add more to the other sections. But yeah, she didn't have a lot of, like, as in, she actually had a really solid resume, but these were sort of the biggest part of it, and it drew your eyes to it.
Now,
Okay, that's my resume.
Yeah.
well, the way to think about it is, regardless, even if you have 10 years of work experience, one-page resume. One-page resume, you're going to have a third of your resume, no more than a third of your resume is education. No more. I don't care, like, if you have 17 degrees, just talk about the 2. That's it. Then your experience has got to be the bulk of it, by far. And in that experience section, it's maximum 3 titles with 3 bullets each. That's it. All of this has to come into 3 bullets. If it can't, you're not doing it right. And then you've got a little bit of space for your address. You've got a little bit of space for your skills or for your interests and all that. But use your formatting well. Using one of those standard template formats makes a huge difference. I often see people who have, like, their name is half the page, and you're like, dude, like, you don't need to do that. Like, that's the least important. People will contact you if you like you. They'll figure your name out. Get the skills in there. So that's really helpful. Now, if you've got a ton of projects, and it's possible, some people just have done a lot of projects, it's fine to have a 2-page resume where your first page is literally the most important page, and you have selected projects on the second page where you can go through some of your projects in more detail. That's fine, but if you have a 2-page resume, you've got to assume that half the people will never look at the second one, so the first page has to tell the whole story. You can't do, I'm going to go half my experience on this and then half my experience on this. No. Everything on the first page, selected projects on the second page.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, like, there was one amongst you who had, like, she had an awesome website where she had all of her other projects on her website. Who was that here? Is she here? But, like, that was, again, a question of prioritization, right? She put the stuff on there and was like, the rest of my stuff is on my website, go there. And she had a whole lot of data science projects on there, which I thought was really impressive. So we're going to take one of these really easy things and go through this once, and then I want to, like, go through it in groups with your own resumes to do the same thing with a couple of the things. So if we take this, use TM, Word Cloud, and Quantita to do text mining of Kickstarter's projects. So, Xiaomin, where did you get the data from?
So Professor gave us data.
So
No,
what
bad
was-
answer. You can't say that in a resume. The professor gave us the data. How did he get the data from?
So, but I mean, that's how, like, data science projects are in schools. And so you kind of have to, like, in that case, I just said,
Let's skip that part.
we'll skip that. Well, you can
But
do,
yeah, was it a CSV? Was it an
Yeah.
Was it CSV? So you dealt with a large data set. Did you import it into a SQL database or something to analyze it? BigQuery, any of those things?
In R.
In R? Okay, we can start with that.
yeah, we can start with that. So then the other question I asked her was how big was the data set?
That's
It was
a
like
lot.
148,000. That's actually pretty big. Like, this sort of thing was just like, okay, did you import 20 jobs versus like 148,000? I asked her, why did you do the analysis? And she had a hypothesis that the readability of the project descriptions could predict how well the projects did. And so she did text analysis on that. And essentially, you know, the rest of it is that these are, she did natural language processing. So this was one of the things that, you know, text mining won't make any sense to someone who is not a data scientist. And so we sort of put natural language processing because she's applying for jobs that might mention that, and that'll be something that they can search for. And if they've mentioned NLP as well, I'd put it in brackets, even if it's like you're overkilling it, just because someone might search for NLP. And you know, TF-IDF, and then you talk about the packages at the very end. So does that sort of make sense? Like she basically analyzed 148,000
I would still
Kickstarter
say
projects.
in R as opposed to just where content
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. We'll fix that. So she analyzed 148,000 using natural language processing techniques such as TF-IDF in R to generate a model to predict project success. So now we actually have a clear understanding of what that project was. It kind of makes a lot more sense, and even someone who is kind of like doesn't understand what TF-IDF is, they're like, okay, so she did some text thing to, and that part of it kind of makes sense, right?
Was your model predictive?
Oh, you should mention
Put that here. Model achieved a prediction rate of
Of
this,
whatever
or an
percentage.
area under curve of this, or something.
Right? That's cool.
I mean, 90% of the data scientists don't ever get a predictive model. So if you're reaching predictions, come on.
Yeah, even like it's in, or if your false positive rate is like low, whatever else, like just put it in. Like
Talk
this-
about success.
Yeah.
Always.
So let's do this. Oh, this is the other part of it. So this is just another example. I want you guys, this is again something else that she had on her resume. This is a point that she had, actually, this is in her experience section, that I think, again, is an example of where she was just like, here's the model, and then we looked at this broad relationship. And I think this can actually be improved. But it was, again, it's like, you know, she analyzed lots of different data sources, she pulled them together, and like, she couldn't tell me how big they were, but she sort of characterized what the interaction between all of these different components were, right? And a fixed effects model sounds really impressive, so like someone will look at that and be like, actually that looks really cool. And you could also have mentioned that, you know, what you found. But you only have so much space, so that's totally fine. So any questions about this? Because the next thing we're going to do is actually break out into little groups and start doing it to your own resumes.
So, can I ask you one question? Is anyone putting non-United States numbers or phone numbers or addresses on your resumes?
No, they're not.
Okay,
They've all got like.
I still get a lot of resumes from people who work in the US, but they'll put an international number. And you're just like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, and also don't do the +1 thing. It confuses like hiring
Yeah.
managers who aren't used to like a lot of these people don't have passports, right? So they've never like it makes it look like it's an international phone number even if it's not. So yeah, like but they don't. They all have perfectly fine in that sense. So if we want to break out and start doing like this for a couple of the points that you guys have, whichever ones you're having trouble with, because we're going to come around and hopefully we can all share it with each other in terms of the before and after, because I want to be able to get this into your resumes as soon as possible. Okay? Sound good?
Is there anyone forgot to bring their resume?
Oh, I have all your resumes here.
We also printed
Yeah,
Oh, you did?
So,
Anyone who needs their resumes, like,
And we have extra pen and pencil.
yeah, I have a ton of pens too. You're welcome to.
Or you could do it on these fancy Microsoft computers in front of you.
You want?
Oh,
What?
Actually, I thought everyone owned a Microsoft computer here. I was
No.
like, dedication to the cause.
Anyone need a pencil?
anyone need a pen?
yeah.
Everyone need to bring
Apparently.
resume? Okay, everybody's bringing their resume.
Is everyone clear like what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, does that make sense? Because I mean, we talk
Just take
fast.
one section. You don't need to. just
Yeah,
take
don't do
one.
it to everything. Take the hardest bullets that you're having trouble with and just